Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Open Mic Comedy Podcast. I'm your host, Mark. If it's your first time here, welcome. If you're a returning listener, welcome back. This podcast is here for everybody on the open mic comedy circuit and beyond. Whether you're a comedian, an MC, a promoter, or a tutor, even comedy fans enjoy watching the stars of the future in the pub basements. If you're thinking I could do that, then this podcast will guide you in what to expect on this crazy circuit from those right in the middle of it. Today's guest is a writer, a performer, and she is the creator and the host of the Punorama Investigates podcast. Please welcome to the stage, it's Annabel Edmonds.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Mark.
That's okay. How are you?
I'm really well. I'll pretend that we haven't had this conversation 5 minutes ago. I'm still really well, Mark. Are you
Good.
also still really well?
I'm okay. I'm okay. The doors stopped knocking. No phones are ringing. We're ready to go, and hopefully we'll get some peace and quiet.
Wonderful. Well, yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Good. Thank you. Thank you for agreeing to come on.
Well, I mean, I asked you, so thank you for agreeing to have me on and agreeing to my agreement.
Yes. Very confusing for a start, but we're getting there.
Yeah.
So your comedy history, we'll touch on it in a bit as we go along, but you are not currently performing as a stand-up comic.
No.
But you were previously. So how did you get into it, and how did that whole journey start? And the background?
Yeah, so the journey started for me during the pandemic. So I'd always wanted to do stand-up, but was terrified of getting on stage. But then, of course, the pandemic meant no one was getting on stage, but there were Zoom courses happening. Yeah. So Angel Comedy was running a beginner's course with the really lovely Dec Monroe. He's still running that course, no longer on Zoom, of course. I'd really recommend it to anyone. It was so lovely, so welcoming, taught you joke structure, it just gave you confidence really in your own sense of humor. And allowed you to analyze it a bit more than, oh, that person's funny, but I don't know why they're funny. So I signed up for that Zoom course, met a lot of really lovely people. This is 3.5 years ago. I did some Zoom gigs, which I don't recommend, but like they went fine. And then I did my first in-person Comedy Virgins at the Cav, which I'm sure loads of people do. And I'd also been inspired by The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, so I did sort of like a tribute, like got like a 1950s dress and like a petticoat, and it went so badly. But I was like, I can't stop now. I've bought this sodding petticoat. I have to keep going. So I kept going. And then, of course, like, so you can't stop when it's bad because that's embarrassing. Then when you've got like slightly good, you can't stop then because you can always tweak it and make it better. And when it's going really well, why would you stop then? So in 3.5 years, I got up to over 400 gigs. Wow. So I did a lot before I quit.
That's some going.
That's, yeah, I went in.
All in, as they say. So did you have any background before doing the course in any kind of performance or anything else like that?
No, I've never performed. The only background I had was in writing, but not creative writing. I used to work for a dementia charity, getting funding from councils, and like you often have to do effectively essays on why you're the best charity for it. So I would write a 1,000-word essay on why our HR team was the best. So you'd have to apply some creativity so that people didn't fall asleep during listening to it, during reading it. But no, this was, I was 29 when I started. And that was the first comedy that I'd ever done.
So when you begun, what was the trajectory like? How did you find going through the ranks with open mic comedies, starting with, presumably you kind of graduated beyond, say, the sort of bringer level.
Mm-hmm.
How did you find all of that and the progress you made through the circuit doing that?
I am really lucky in that I'm married to a very supportive man. So I had a built-in bringer who came with me, and it's the reason I got to so many gigs so quickly. So he was very supportive. I would say in terms of what made the difference was going outside of London. And again, like clearly there's things to do with class there, right? There's things to do with can you afford the train journey out?
Yeah.
So I gigged a lot in Bristol, in Brighton, further afield like Nottingham. I would say the biggest jump up I had really in terms of my skills was when I started to go outside London. Not that there was anything wrong with the London gigs, but you
Yeah.
were seeing the same people
Yeah.
and you were basically only doing 5 minutes. Whereas at other gigs, they'd be like, oh, you've done 50 gigs, have 15 minutes. And you're like, oh,
Yes.
okay, I'll stitch together my 5 minutes then, is what I'll do. So that's how I found it. I found move by the end I was doing mostly Brighton for my open mic because I'm South London, so I can get to Brighton. Maybe takes me half an hour longer, but not loads longer.
Yeah.
And found that it was a community where there was more progression, and also I didn't have to bring someone because I won't say my marriage was in trouble because my husband is a lovely, lovely man, but I felt bad for him. It's
Yes.
like you should stay at home more. You don't have to see this anymore.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. It's when I think if you're single and you get into a relationship whilst you're doing it, then there's no excuse. But
Yeah,
sometimes the shock to the system of, oh, you're out again,
yeah,
and it's not a case of being picky about it. It's like, I want to spend time with you.
yes,
Do you know what I mean? And then even if they don't say it, you internally are like, this feels, I'm not being a very good partner here. I need to adjust something, whatever that is. But there is
mm,
that point where bringing somebody along who's seen your set so many times in the past
yeah.
and you drag them along to a night in a basement where 4 people have turned up, and you're like, I say to my wife sometimes, like, I'm sorry you came to this. I'm sorry this is the one you decided to come to. There
Yeah,
are better
yeah,
ones out there. Let's try and work out which are the better ones, and
yes,
you go to
yes.
those ones. But yeah, the balance between family life and being able to do comedy at a certain level, I think it's a very big balancing act.
Yeah. And I don't have kids, so I imagine for those that's a hugely different um issue, like in
Yeah,
a you've got real responsibilities here. Mine is I feel very lucky because I just have a really good I want to spend time with my husband, so it's and I also want to do comedy, and those are two there's no how can I put this? uh I love both. I clearly love my husband more, but like they're both two good options, I guess, that I'm having to deal with. I'm not feeling guilty in the same way, but I am
yeah,
aware that, as you say, when I'm bringing him to a bringer night, not only is he seeing me perform, he's seeing basically everyone else on the lineup perform again, and he's having to deal with me on the way home. Go, hey, so I told that joke slightly differently. I left this pause here. Did you think that worked? And he's like, I mean, it was fine. I wasn't really listening to it if he left the pause slightly longer this time. So
yeah.
yeah.
Fair enough. So, what in your 400 gigs can you remember? Sort of like the standout good and bad moments on stage.
Well, I'll start with a bad one because that's the fun. That's the people want to hear about your bad gigs, don't they? Of
Yep.
course they do. um, my worst gig was at Beat the Blackout, which is for people who don't know, it's a gong show, and people in the audience you can hold up a red card and get people off. So it's not really for comedy fans. It's for people who like to bully comedians.
Mhm.
And I would say if you're struggling with high self-esteem, a gong show is a good way to remedy that. I had a bad time, and I knew that like having a bad time was possible.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how bad a time I would have in that I told my first couple of jokes and the crowd hated me. And like 2 of the 3 cards went up, and I was like, okay, well, I'm going home then. But the third guy hated me so much. He did a thing which I haven't really seen at gong shows before, which was he like made dead eye contact with me and
Yeah.
like kept like shaking his head like, I am not letting you leave the stage. And it
Oh.
became like a hostage negotiation of me going like, you hate me, I hate me, let me leave, just go. And eventually they had to come over the speakers and And they had to do their override and be like, and she's gonged off. The third guy never gonged me off. He hated me that much. So
Oh,
that's a really, if you want to fuck with a comedian, don't gong them off. Let them struggle and refuse to let them leave. That was my worst gig.
I have I've not seen that, but as soon as you say it, I'm thinking, oh, I know where she's going with this, and this is not
Yeah.
good. And
Yeah.
it's a bigger punishment than just saying go.
Yeah, it was bad. So yeah, that guy hated me. I have had I have had some good gigs within the 400. So like, I got to do my show at Brighton Fringe a couple of years ago called Gremlin. I did that for 4 dates, and like by the third date, I just everything was hitting, and it was
Yeah.
every joke I wanted to land, and it was one of those like cosmic experiences where you're like, I'm attuned to the universe. That was felt incredible. Um, but then also the first time I went outside of London, I went to Bristol, and coming from, as you say, the bringer gigs where everyone's seen everyone before, and like people are very nice, but you're not
Yeah.
going to laugh as much if you've seen it before. Yeah, going to Bristol where they've got like open mic, has big audiences and supportive community. That was the first time I thought, oh, I can properly do this. I can
Yeah.
actually do this, which was, it felt incredible.
So the traveling further afield and being in front of, I guess, the Bristol gigs and things like that are more a paid audience and stuff like that, rather than
No, so that
no.
wasn't well, there was a bucket at the end, but we
Yeah.
weren't getting that. So the MC and the organisers would get that, but it was just an open mic. It was just an
Okay.
open mic on a Sunday. And I thought, this is it. Like, I don't really know why I've gone to Bristol for this. And then I saw the room, and it was a packed pub room with everyone there to see
Yeah.
comedy. Yeah, the vibe was just totally different. And of course, they'd never seen me before, so all my jokes were a surprise to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just felt so different and so really great.
Okay. Good. So now you've kind of stopped within
Mhm.
comedy or within stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
What have you moved on to now? What's the
So
projects?
yeah, I've not stopped comedy cold turkey. I now do improv. So I'm in 4 improv groups. So
Okay.
while I was getting up to performing stand up sort of 3-4 times a week. Now I'm doing improv about once, maybe if you include rehearsals, twice a week.
Yeah.
But because of the stage times, I'm actually on stage for a similar amount of time, which I wasn't necessarily expecting. But yeah, improv. I do a lot of comedy writing, so I'm back at the Brighton Fringe to do a live read through of my sitcom scripts, 2 sitcom scripts, which I've written. I write for radio, so The Skewer is a satirical show on Radio 4.
Okay.
And I do my podcast, Punorama Investigates, which is a bit like Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, except in half the time and with 0.5% of the budget, doing like deep dives, deep dives of certain topics in the news, but with jokes and silly noises. So yeah,
Yeah.
I've not abandoned comedy, but I have abandoned stand up.
So how have you? I assume then the use of stand-up has kind of morphed into the techniques and things you've learned.
Yeah,
Writing stand-up has morphed into the stuff you do now.
yeah, yeah, 100%. Like just how to write a joke
Yeah.
is so useful, and you learn that in stand up. Well, at least I did on the courses, but you could learn that without doing a course as well. And starting to hear the rhythms in your head, it's hard to explain if you've not done stand up, but you can sort of hear if a joke isn't sounding quite right,
Yeah.
because you're getting so much feedback every time you go on stage. The audience tells you if it's funny or not, whereas when you're writing a script, you're like, is this funny? I don't know. But I've got all that memory rhythm, that's not a word. I can't explain it, but I have enough I don't know, understanding of the rhythms of jokes to know when a line is funny now. And being on stage, like improv, you can see people who've not been on stage before look nervous and look
Yeah.
like they're not having fun, and just looking like you want to be there is a huge part of getting an audience to relax and laugh. So yeah, stand up, I credit it for so much. It's been so helpful to me. and I'm sorry I'm not staying, but thank you, stand up. I will now take the lessons you've taught me and bugger off elsewhere.
I think it's all about cadence, isn't it? Cadence is the word you were
Yes,
probably
that's
looking
the
for.
word I was looking for.
Yeah,
Cadence.
you realize it when you're on stage or whatever, and you're doing jokes, and it's the pattern of the words and the speed you're going at, and it's a little bit like you mentioned, the extra pause changes the cadence of a joke, giving that little extra gap for somebody else's brain to catch up, because you know where it's going.
Yeah.
You need the audience to come along with you, but then you need to allow that little bit where if it's not quite as clear to them as it would be to you. But when you're writing stuff for radio and the sitcoms you're starting to put together, do you find yourself writing it in terms of like how you would write stand-up?
Yes and no. So sometimes you're writing a story, so that is sometimes a bit different to stand up. Although of course you have storytelling stand up. I would say that it is quite similar for me in terms of economy of words. What do you want to say, and what's the quickest route to say it?
Yeah.
Like how, for example, in sitcom, what you often see in scripts is there's too many characters. People are just, putting 10 characters in, which is confusing. Can you do the same thing with 3? That economy of ideas, economy of words. What's the quickest way to the joke? How many jokes can you cram in within one scene?
Yeah.
What are you trying to do with the scene is a similar thing to what are you trying to do with a 5-minute set. Not that you necessarily have to have like a political point, but what is your 5-minute set about? What's the journey that you take the audience on? So in many ways, it's very similar. It's a lot of transferable skills.
Because I'm wondering if, like, when you read your script, when you read it back, could you imagine yourself doing it in like a stand-up routine?
I don't think you could necessarily do it in a stand-up routine, but you could certainly do it as a sketch. And I perform sketch comedy with Next Level Sketch at London Bridge. So yes, you could. I think for sitcoms, scenes should be funny on their own. Perhaps you need to know who people are, but the scenes should work as their own discrete bits of funniness, as it were.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have like a throwaway scene. So yeah, no, they should work on stage with a couple of people performing, she says. But that's of course why I'm doing it at Brighton Fringe in front of people, because the audience, the wonderful thing about audiences is that they will tell you. The audience is a fantastic and great thing.
So is this your first foray as such into writing sitcom style?
No, so I did a course because I'm a lover of courses. I did just writing sitcom course, and I wrote a 15-minute one for a competition called Sitcom Mission, but I also submitted it to Female Pilot Club, and I got to, I want to say, the quarterfinals of that with a sitcom about a family who gets stuck on a deserted island. It's a bit like Arrested Development meets Lost, but I am aware that it was my first one, so I was learning how to do it.
Yeah.
And I just firmly believe that the best way to write anything good is to write something bad first. So like it was pretty all right for like the first one, but I'm not hugely attached to, I want to make that. It's like, okay, well, I've learned how to, do scenes and write characters and write storylines now. I will, carry on writing, and hopefully with each project it gets better.
Yeah. So when you were writing jokes then for stand up and even part of the sitcom, what do you have like a process you go through, or is it just a case of chuck something out and see what happens? Or
yeah, I guess for sitcom, I find improv really helpful, because with improv, it's all about listen and respond, right? What did the previous person said? What would I say to that? Or if I were a character who were paranoid or angry or selfish, how would they respond? And it's sort of making that response as amusing as possible. But listening and responding is sort of the key to that, I feel, for writing dialogue, for realistic dialogue. In terms of joke writing, there's a number of techniques. Obviously, you sort of you want a joke that's just so funny you don't even know where it came from. But a lot of the time, there's structure. So there's pull back and reveal, where you
Yeah.
think you're on one track, but actually you reveal it's something else. There's rule of three, where you establish the pattern, you repeat the pattern, you change the pattern. Um, I like the joke pattern where you take something to the nth degree. So you have something like you have an opinion which you genuinely think, but you take it to absurd levels of extremism, or you
Yeah.
take things to their logical conclusion. If you kept down that road, what would this mean and this mean and this mean? Um, but there's lots of joke writing formulas. I find it quite helpful to go through them. Like a word, could it have a double meaning? Could you do a pun with it? I like a pun.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are. If you're really feeling stuck for inspiration, you can just go through the different joke methods and see if any of them will hit. And then usually that will inspire more original thoughts, perhaps.
Mm. So when you were on stage as a stand-up, what type of comedian were you?
I really varied quite a lot. So I know that people are like, oh, you'll eventually find who you are, but I just did what I found interesting. So I did a lot of character stuff. Like I did one where I was a train driver. I've done one where I'm a news anchor, which isn't that different to, I guess, what I do now with Punorama Investigates. I did things where I'm the world's greatest detective and I whack on a fake moustache.
Yeah.
I guess I'm often I'm often quite intense on stage. I like a tightly written thing. I like to literally write the script and see where can I lose a syllable, for example. How like is there a quicker way of doing this?
Yeah.
But I didn't want to. It didn't bring me joy to be like, oh, I'm going to do everything as the detective. I'd be like, okay, well, I've got 10 minutes of the detective. Then I
Yeah.
will rip off the fake moustache and do other things. Like I also like a prop, but I don't do props all the time. So I can't necessarily help you with what comedian I am. I'm a comedian who consistently did what was interesting to her, even if audiences sometimes disagreed with me.
But so long as you're true to yourself, the audience have to enjoy it or you have to enjoy it. If the
Yeah,
audience don't enjoy it and you enjoy it, that's fine. That's good. That's good enough.
yeah.
If neither of you enjoy it, why?
Yeah, why would you do that? Yep.
Yeah. So we've kind of I was going to say we've alluded to, but we've not actually alluded to it at all. We've said you've kind of pushed the stand-up barrier, the stand-up comedy to one side now.
Yeah.
I guess why and how and what was that process like?
Yeah. So the why, for the good reasons, are the reasons I've mentioned. I love doing improv. I love doing writing. I love being on stage with funny people. I love getting to do projects that I find interesting. I love not getting back at 3 in the morning. I love not paying for train fare. Um, so those are the good reasons.
Yeah.
The bad reason, the big reason that I talk about on Panorama Investigates, is because stand up has a huge problem with sexual harassment. So I did it for 3.5 years. By the time I left, I had to keep a spreadsheet of all the predatory men, and I got to 50. So that's roughly once a month that I was hearing about.
Yeah.
And it's quite a lot to process. It's quite a lot to be like, okay, what do I do now? Quite a lot of sadness within the joy of stand up.
Yeah.
And I'm not alone with that. Chortle reported that 75% of female comics have been verbally sexually harassed. 1 in 4 have been sexually assaulted. But more than the number, the thing I found bleak was that there was no there's no system for getting these people out, and there's not a lot of acknowledgement that this is a big problem. We talk so much about heckling as an issue. We
Yeah.
talk so much about cancel culture and what can you say, what's a joke that you shouldn't say. We're really not talking at all about what I would view as one of the biggest things. So yeah, I've left and I've slammed the door on my way out. But I know loads of female comics who have gradually stopped performing or don't do as many nights anymore. And because comedy is a craft, right,
Yeah.
the fewer nights you do, the fewer gigs you do, you're hurting your own craft there. So yeah, I volunteer at a mental health charity as well, and basically it's a free helpline, and anything that's got a free helpline, you get men wanking at you. I'm sorry to be explicit, but that you just do. But
that
there's like,
that I've got to say,
yeah,
I've obviously listened to Panorama, and
yeah,
specifically those 2 episodes that you've put out, which are fantastic
thank you.
and also harrowing to listen to from
Yeah,
my side when I'm looking at what I've seen so far and stuff and going, this shouldn't happen.
yeah,
And when you were talking about the helpline, I'm just like,
yeah,
no,
yeah,
really?
yeah,
This
yeah,
is what?
yeah, yeah. But it feels very different because at my interview, they were like, "Do you know that men are going to wank at you?" There's a whole day of training, which is how to deal with it. There's a whole support system. There's a policy. There's a list of like common misuse of service people. So this is not a real example, but say Johnny rings up and he's got a particular. He always calls himself Johnny, and he's got a Northern Irish accent, and he always has the same scenario. You might type in John when you're thinking, where's this going? You might type in Johnny, and if these details are matching, you can end
Yeah,
the call because you're like, aha, I don't have to. I know who you are.
yeah,
Because they're repeat callers, and then you would turn around and speak to your colleague and be like, "Oh, I got Johnny again," and they were like, "Oh, I had Johnny last week," and it just, it just yeah, but it is funny. Like, I obviously it's not acceptable that they're doing that, but it's acknowledged. You're supported. There's a system in place. It just feels a lot more like we have a plan. Like we're not coming into this blind. We have a plan of how to deal with it. It's not 100% successful, and they know that, but there's support in place. Whereas stand up, like pretty much every promoter will have a very serious thing about, we have a no tolerance policy,
yeah,
and you're like, but that can't be true because it's happening everywhere.
yeah,
It just feels, I've said this before, but it feels like a Kafka-esque slap in the face. So what it just feels very grim and bleak in the way that, ironically, you'd have thought the mental health helpline feels a lot more joyful and a lot more in control. And stand up was the thing that by the end was getting bleak and sad for me.
yeah. The other point that I noted down when I was listening was when you said about you can say to like the promoter beforehand, I'm not performing if so and so's on the bill,
Yeah.
and then so and so just turns up as a punter
Yeah.
and then sees if they could get on, and you
Yeah.
kind of like, I know the next words coming out of my mouth are questioning it, but my thought was, does that really happen? And you
Yeah.
kind of think, what goes through somebody's head
Mm.
to, it's almost like they know what you've said,
Yeah.
and they've tried to do a power trip by saying, I'm still going to be here anyway.
Well, they might not know that I've said that. So it, without giving names, for that particular example, he certainly knows that people are not comfortable being on stage with him. He certainly knows that
Yeah.
the allegations have been made public within Brighton. He might not necessarily know it's me because,
No.
for example, Brighton, a lot of the time it's Google Forms. I would put at the bottom of the Google form, I'm not comfortable being on a gig with such and such because of the allegations. All of the promoters know what I'm talking about, and so what I'd like them to do is to never book this guy again. But what they'll do is say, I will prioritize you over him. So on the 16th, you're on the bill and he's not. But he wants to get on in stand up. How do you get on in stand up? You get the most gigs possible.
Yeah.
Also, I think it's a bit of an emperor's new clothes thing, right? And if you brazen it out, if you make everyone around you accept this,
Yeah.
if you're like, I can make this seem normal by turning up, then it becomes much harder for anyone to challenge you.
Yeah.
Because you're thinking, sorry, what? But it seems like everyone's cool with this, but maybe they're not cool with this. and I want to go on stage in 5 minutes, and I'm trying to remember my set. But why is he here? It's a real mind fuck. So yeah, I think some of it is because he's a nasty piece of work, and some of it is because he wants stage time, and
Yeah.
no one is necessarily brave enough to go, sorry, could you just leave, because we actually don't want you here.
Yeah. It just feels so depressing.
Mm,
I mean, everybody's heard of the female WhatsApp group that's out there
yeah.
and things like that. But then when you hear it being said on a public forum as openly as you said it on
Yeah.
Punorama, it kind of brings it home. And I saw some comments by various people I know
Mm,
on the circuit who have listened to it and have said, you have to listen. Everybody has to just listen to this just to get an understanding of what's going on.
yeah.
And kind of make everybody supportive of each other, but make other people accountable for what they're causing other people to feel.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'm so pleased it's had the response it has. And like, as I say, I don't, other than of course the people perpetuating this and like doing the bad stuff, I know that no one else wants this. Like, people might not know how bad it is, but no one is wanting this. No one thinks it's okay. And
Yeah.
if we just like sort ourselves out basically and get organized, we can get rid of these dicks. Like,
Yeah.
no one wants them around. There's loads of funny, lovely people. Like, can't we just have a nice time with funny, lovely people, please? It would be so much better.
Mm. So I would assume that this hasn't translated into the improv circuit.
No, but that doesn't. Okay, so sexual misconduct is like butter applied by a toddler in that it's everywhere, but it's not spread evenly.
Yeah.
So I am sure that there have been bad things that have happened to people in improv. I'm sure of that.
Yeah.
However, in an improv team, you're not on your own. So if someone is giving me a hard time in my improv team, it's very much in the rest of the improv team's interest to back me and make sure the team works, because you're working together and you want it to be lovely and supportive.
Yeah.
Whereas with stand up, I guess you're on your own, and if someone drops out, well, maybe you get a bit more stage time, or that it's a very lonely endeavor in that sense. But also with improv, there are two big companies in London, at least. There are other little ones, but there are two big players, and I
Yeah.
know who I'd go to. Like, if something happened, I know the process. I know what would happen. I'd only have to convince one person who I think is lovely. In Brighton, if I wanted to get someone out of just Brighton, I would have to, according to the people that I think there are about 19 promoters in Brighton, some of which, by the way, are predators. So, like, yeah. I would have to convince 19 people to never book this one person again. And even if I was successful in that, they could just get the train to London, where no one knows what they're accused of. Like,
Yeah.
it's there's no system for getting rid of these people. And when I said I had a spreadsheet of 50 men, only one of them I think is no longer doing stand up. All the rest are still going, because we don't. What's the process? What's the plan? Even if you can get rid of them out of one venue,
Yeah.
it's terrible. There is a thing for helping people. It's called Get Off Live Comedy, and they do training, and they sort of are a bit like HR, in that they will support you if you've been a survivor of these sorts of behaviours. The reason why they're not entirely like HR is that they can't tell venues, like the 500 venues or however many across the land don't
Yeah.
work with this man. They don't have the resources or the legal powers to do so. So Get Off Live Comedy is a really great resource, but you also need a systemic response to this. The female WhatsApp groups that we mentioned before, they're a great resource of support and information sharing, quite frankly. Um, but there's also things under employment law, for example. The fact that stand-up comedy clubs are frequently workplaces, and workplaces have a duty of care to protect their employees. Now, stand-up with open mic, where does that fall? I'm not entirely clear. I'm not a lawyer, but there are potential recourses. But Get Off Live Comedy is a great resource as well for if you run a venue. I would really recommend checking them out, because they can give you information on how to protect people. Because again, if you're a lovely promoter, you love comedy, you want to see comedians succeed, you want to help them have a nice time. Like, yeah, this is a resource for you. It's not all about, I don't want people to feel ashamed or like, oh, there's this extra thing. All these men are causing the extra thing, the extra hassle, the extra bother. So if you can come up with a system, it's actually less bother overall.
Yeah. I've been in kind of some sort of situation when I started out. I was, I still am friends with that person. And when I was looking for gigs, they said, oh, I've done this gig. And they said, oh, I've done this one. But their words were, they were not fans of white women. And it wasn't a welcoming atmosphere.
Yeah.
I think was the words that they used. And I've never, ever performed there and taken some things on board. So I would say to people is just listen to your peers as well.
Yeah. Listen to them and ask them. Because most people, if you ask, oh, who's Georgie, they'll give you a list of names. That's how I found out. It's people want to help other people. There's a lot of goodwill here. There's a lot of solidarity. So yeah, just ask and listen and support.
So if there was a system or something in place, do you think you would have stayed at doing stand-up?
Oh, 100%. 100%. Yeah. Because I love it and I miss it and I want to do more shows. And to be honest, you just don't get a high like you do in stand-up. The lows are very low, but the high, there is no high. Like you've written something, you've performed it on stage and it gets a big laugh.
Yeah.
Like there's no high like it. So I do miss it as much as I think improv and writing are better for me, and they are better for me. They're like, I don't know, a nourishing Sunday roast. But stand-up is like crack. And so,
that's one way to put it.
The highs of crack are higher than the highs of Sunday roast. That's the comparison.
Yeah. Sunday roast is consistent, but getting good crack. Well, I've never been a drug person, but
and it's not good
I know
for
exactly
you.
what you're saying. Yeah. It's that moment where you do something, you come off stage and you get an applause break for something, you just kind of go, this is it. This is why I do it.
Yeah.
This is the moment. And you go, I want that again. And then you keep chasing and chasing and chasing and
It's
chasing.
addictive. It's addictive.
I don't think a lot of people realize how addictive it is until they're, looking from the outside. You kind of look at a professional do it and they make it look so easy. And you kind of go, it looks easy. And then they give it a go and then it doesn't go well. But then there's that moment where it does go well and you go, that's the thing.
Yeah.
That's the thing. That's what I want.
Yeah, this is why you've left the house at 5:30 for 5 minutes and you've got home at midnight. Because those 5 minutes, there might be a couple of seconds in there that feel incredible.
Yes.
That's what you want.
Greetings, listener. Sorry for the interruption. It's John Pegg from episode 41. If, like me, you're loving this episode, in the hot tub with 9 merchant sailors, listen to your higher self, consider giving it a 5-star rating, and follow the pod on whatever app you're using. It's the right thing to do, right lads? And Mark will be forever grateful. Now, our helicopter has arrived, so I must beg your leave. But please, enjoy the rest of this absolute humdinger of an episode.
So with the podcast then, did that just feel like a natural progression from the radio stuff you've been doing?
No. So what I wanted to do was I was going to do a show. This is back when I was still grimly hanging on to stand-up. I was going to do a show at Edinburgh. It was going to be called The Daily Show, brackets, no, not that one, after the American news comedy show. And it was going to be every day was going to be like 10 minutes of jokes about news that happened the day before and like 20 minutes or 15 minutes of a deep dive into a topic, which would be different every day, and then a bit of improv to frankly pad out the time. Because I just thought doing 30 mediocre shows might be easier than doing one brilliant show. And also it just sounded mad. And I thought, what is the Fringe for other than madness? So I met up with Dec Monroe, the guy from Angel Comedy. And he was like, Annabel, this is mad. It's possible, but it is mad. Also, don't spend all your money on making this a Fringe show. This is a podcast. And I was like, oh, okay, actually, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I spent the next 9 months essentially planning for it. So I found a great sound person called Emma Millen. She's fantastic. She puts everything together and makes it sound good. I got Rubia Sinha Roy to do the artwork. I practiced. I really spent a lot of time on the first episode and got it sounding how I wanted. And then I put it out. So although I'd written for radio and though I'd performed live, I'd never performed live on radio, as it were. So it felt like a bit of a leap, but also I want to make things. I don't want things to be stuck in a drawer. And that's what I miss from stand-up, right? If you have an idea at 2 p.m. and you can be on stage at 7 with it, I wanted to make a thing, and I'd rather it be made rather than be perfect but sat in a drawer. And I'm really glad of the response that it's had, but also even if no one listened, I wanted to make it. So I'm pleased that I got to do it. I'm so lucky.
I think the little musical touches throughout the episode, they work in a really interesting way, in that if you're talking about something that's not fun, they can then change the mood slightly to balance something out. Or likewise with the funny little clips that come along and just the silly little noises that come out. I think they're great. They're a way of enhancing, so it doesn't just sound like every other podcast out there. If you know what I mean.
Thank you. I didn't want it to sound like every other one, and I also knew that I only had 15 minutes because, like, you don't want to hear my voice for 2 hours. Just 15 minutes. We're in, we're out. Bam. That's what I wanted.
What's your release schedule at the moment? Is it weekly or is it fortnightly?
Yeah, so it's weekly. I'm doing 8 episodes a series. So at the moment of record, episode number 5 is out. Series 2 will be out on June the 11th, and it will be every week Wednesdays. But I can't do like every week forever because it's taking over my life. It's a lot of work to put I know that this podcast can go easily 90 minutes of good chat that's really engaging to listen to. I can't do that. I've only got 15 minutes in me. So,
That's actually an interesting point, actually. I think is it Sean Walsh, and I can't remember the other guy's name. What's Up With You Now? I think it's called. And it's literally 10, 15 minutes long.
Yeah.
And you kind of find that somebody that's in the public eye so much, who's a stand-up, or both of them are stand-up comics, and they have a literally 15-minute podcast, and you kind of think, that almost feels like a bit of a waste in a way. But in some ways, it's like when you want that quick thing to listen to, you can just go, put it on, listen, enjoy it, wait for the next one, kind of thing. Whereas, sometimes some things like this, they require listeners to be paying attention, etc., and you need to find ways to keep that engagement going, to keep people listening. Podcasting is fun. It is fun. Have you actually got the plan already then for series 2?
I know a couple of episodes that will be in series 2. So one of them will be, just because hey, you know me, I love a fun topic. I'm be talking about Pip. So yes, as you can guess, I don't approve of what the government is doing with Pip. But rather than 15 minutes of me saying, isn't it terrible? I'm going to do some actual analysis and also write some jokes about the terrible, terrible things we're doing with welfare cuts. And that will take me a little while to do, but that's going to be one of them. Another one is about cancel culture and how it's a really nebulous term that we're not really pinning down and why that's a problem. So I tend to be sort of a couple of weeks ahead, but with some episodes that I'm sort of working on constantly. And I'd say sort of the longer I work on an episode, the less people care the ones that I put the least amount of effort sometimes get the bigger response. But that's just the way it goes. It's sometimes things are for me, not for you guys. Never mind.
Yeah, no, I completely appreciate it. There's sometimes I'll record an episode and go, that was brilliant, and I look at the numbers and go, what didn't hit the spot in that, or what wasn't engaging about it, and it's an absolute minefield, especially if you're on a weekly schedule, because you get to a point where somebody goes, oh, I've listened to that one because I knew that person. You go, great. What about the person you didn't know?
Yeah.
This is the whole point. We're introducing everybody to everybody.
Yeah.
It's a big dinner party. Oh, look, who's walked in now?
Yes.
Come and meet so-and-so. So yeah, it's a bit of a strange one for me, trying to work all of this out, especially from an early stage. And I guess you'll go through this trying to work out why did this topic hit and why did this not, and stuff like that.
Yeah. And you can just drive yourself mad. It's like sometimes there is just no reason. And what can you do?
Very much so, very much so. You touched on it earlier as well, that you are at the Brighton Fringe this year. What are the details?
The details are Annabel Edmonds does a live read-through of her sitcom scripts to critical acclaim and universal approval, because I wanted a pithy title. But just search Annabel Edmonds and Brighton Fringe. So I'm doing 4 dates, but on the Thursday I'm doing a script called Gimme Shelter, which is a bit like Parks and Rec if Leslie Knope worked at a homeless shelter and was a lot worse at her job.
Right.
And I have the wonderful Jess Karavic, who was on BBC sitcom, as the lead for that. So that's Thursdays. Then on the Fridays, I am doing a read-through of Stakeout, which is a woman finds that her steak sandwich has been stolen from the office fridge. And rather than letting that go, she starts her own true crime podcast to bring the thief to justice. And I'm very lucky because Jess Karavic is also the lead in that. But also we've got Cadwyn Blaney, who's a fantastic comedian and also has been on a BBC sitcom. So I'm so appreciative that they're doing it. I think it's going to be. I'm going to really enjoy it. I'm going to really enjoy seeing them perform. But we're also going to take videos of it, so that if you can't make it down to Brighton, producers, I'm talking to you. I can send it to you. You're not free of this. I'm really thrilled with the scripts. I'm really thrilled with the cast. I'm really excited to show it to people. I'm looking forward to it.
So how long has this taken you to put into practice? And how long does it take for you to write the sitcom?
Well, so it depends on how where we're beginning the process, I guess.
I'm intrigued whether it's. I'm assuming it's like the idea was born in 2006.
Yeah,
I thought, I'll take this on and stuff like that.
Yeah, so Gimme Shelter is based on some of my experiences when I worked at a homeless shelter. My first job was working with rough sleepers at St Mungo's. So I knew that when I did the sitcom writing course, I eventually wanted to do a sitcom about that, but I knew I didn't have the chops yet. So that was sort of percolating. Then I wrote a scene. I wrote a 2-person scene on it. And then I read it and I thought, this is dog shit. And I put it in a drawer. Well, not literally in a drawer, but I just saved it and then did other things for a bit. Yeah. And I came back to it 9 months later and was like, Annabel, this is actually very good. You're an idiot. So I kept going with it. And then it took, I would say it took maybe 6 weeks to complete the first draft. Yeah. And then ever since, there's been editing and tweaks. So even now on the run up to the Brighton Fringe, I'm still tweaking it. And I'm sure after I hear people perform it live, there'll be more tweaks. But really the bulk of it was within those 6 weeks. Stakeout has been much longer because I've got other projects. But yeah, it's difficult because I've not been focusing on that one as that's not been my solo focus, as it were, in the way that Gimme Shelter was. So overall, maybe a similar time frame, but you're always a lot of the writing, the thinking of it comes when I'm out on walks, and the notes app is your friend, and you'll think of a dialogue. I mean, Stakeout as well, because it's a true crime parody. A lot of the research has been like research, listening to true crime stuff,
Yeah.
because you want to get the tropes. You want this to be as close a parody as possible. I don't know if you know American Vandal. It's on
No.
it's on Netflix. It's a true crime documentary about a high school where someone has drawn a load of dicks on teachers' cars and they investigate that. It's so good. It's also there's a podcast called Who Did a Shit on the Floor at My Wedding, which is literally as it says on the tin.
Yeah.
No spoilers, but that's a real thing that's not scripted. I find the ending a bit unsatisfying because it's real people trying to investigate, and in real life you don't necessarily get the tidy ending. So I want to script a version of that essentially, so that it works as a genuine mystery. Like if you took all the jokes out, it would still work as a compelling story and mystery and true crime audio. But hopefully, if you put the jokes in, it becomes elevates it and makes it funny.
Okay, so I have a certain question that if you've listened to some of these, you'll know about walk on music.
Yes.
If you was to become famous, and which tune would you walk on to? So for you, if you've got a sitcom that's been commissioned, what's the opening theme tune?
Well, for Gimme Shelter, it's Gimme Shelter. So, that's the thing. I don't know what it would be for Stakeout. I like to think it would be this is a reference that I can't even fully explain. Kill Bill, you know that bit where she's just escaped from hospital and she's looking for the car for the pussy wagon, and it's funk, and it's Truck Turner, I think. So like a very like funk, look it up. Google Kill Bill soundtrack, and you know what I mean. I can hear it in my head. That's no use to you, but that's what I'd like.
How long is each sitcom at the moment in terms of?
So at the moment it's a half an hour sitcom, both of them. So I don't think I would. I was about to say I wouldn't do more. I wouldn't do more for the TV one, Gimme Shelter, without it going further because of the amount of work that's involved. With Stakeout, I think you could, even if I didn't get producers involved, I think you could make that myself. However, maybe delete all this, because producers, if you're listening, I can't make it without you. I desperately need you. Ignore what I said just then was a lie. I need you guys. Please fund my project. Producers, stop listening now. Okay, now that they've gone, I think I could make it. So I think you could do like because I know the arc of it. So I've actually written a few scenes for episodes which are not episode 1, because it all needs to tie in. Okay. I think you could do a 4-episode thing that you produce yourself, because I've got some of the cast now, right? I think it would be possible to make it as a budget thing. I'd rather not, because I think I would like to be paid. And also I think like there is a market for a true crime spoof. But as you know, I love to make things. I love to have things made. And if I can make it decently by myself, I would probably make that one.
Okay, no, that would be fun. It'd be good to see, and I'd love to see how it turns out from Brighton. If you are going to be filming parts of it, it'd be really good to see it.
Yeah, well, thank you. I will do so,
and just see what comes of it. It would be. I'm always craving that thing when I have a guest on that then goes beyond the level that they were on when they came on. If you see what I mean, see the progression. They go, that person was on this and that person did that. You know, so I've turned on the TV before and I've seen an act on there who was one of the very first guests on here, and he was part of BBC's new comedy competition.
Yes,
and they're like, he was episode 3 or 4, whatever it was now, and they're like, I know him. He's a lovely guy. I really hope he does well. And you see him and tell you, like, I go, this is surreal.
Yes.
Or you learn about people and what they've done. I always say that we see people in a comedy, on the comedy circuit, and all you see of them is their 5, 7, 10s on stage and a quick hello, goodbye, how you doing, etc.
Yeah.
You don't know about them as a person, and then you start to learn about them. You go, oh, you're in a famous franchise movie, and you're on TV on my favorite TV program I watch with my family all the time, and it's just bizarre things like that. It's always, I want to see somebody go, boom, from here, go, take off. So please get a sitcom
Well, so
written.
do I, but I'm not sure. Like, even if things were to be successful, like, it's so slow with commissioning.
Yeah.
It's so slow with getting anything made. So, yeah.
So have you got any things coming up with the improv group?
Yes. So yeah, I've got 4 improv groups, which is arguably too many. Arguably. But so I'm with a group called Ricky. They are at Instagram under Ricky_improv. We were the Hoopla house team in 2024. So Hoopla is one of the big improv organizations, and Steve Rowe, the lovely Steve Rowe, directed us and brought us together for the whole of 2024, and we've stayed together. And I know that stand-up can be quite sniffy about improv, but I would say that improv is joyous. Improv is lovely. And it's a great community, and you'll have a lovely night out. And also it tends to finish on time and finish a bit early, which is better than stand-up when you're like, oh God, there are 20 acts and it's currently 11:30. You don't have that with improv. The other 3 groups are Improv the Dead, which is a zombie one. We also have Kerfuffle, which is like short form games. And we do Extreme Improv, which is like short form but competitive. So you're competing with one another, but actually it's all, it's not serious. It's all fun and games. So Extreme Improv, I'm back on the 8th of May. That's at the Camden Comedy Club. For anyone who's in Brighton, I've gone back on my word because it was already in the diary, and I'm doing a little bit of stand-up in a show called Boast in Show, which is the opposite of a roast battle. You make jokes which are positive about your competitors, and they've just won best format at Chortle for Brighton. It's run by my friend Dawn Williams. She's fantastic, so I'm performing there in Brighton as well, where I'm saying very nice things about a comedian called Paggy, who is genuinely one of my favourite comedians. She did a whole show about a paintbrush. She's phenomenal. She's done 5-minute sets on like the concept of time and worms. She's so good. There's nothing like her. So I'm really excited to say nice things about her on April the 18th.
I really like that idea. Boasting show. I think that's such a good. We're so used to the roasting part, but to flip it, I think is kind of cool. I always thought about having a kind of reverse gong show.
Yes.
Where somebody goes on, they do 5 minutes, and it's up to the audience that they keep them on. Mm-hmm. So you get, instead of getting a card to go off, and the idea is that you get your time, but then you get the chance to play after because you're not prepared for how much longer you could go on for.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fun.
I think there's probably a hell of logistic issues with timing and stuff, but I don't know. There's got to be a way of doing it somewhere.
Yeah.
Somebody's got more brains to do that than me.
Yeah. No, given the proliferation of gong shows, that sounds a very welcome addition to that genre.
So where can people find you then online?
Yes, people can find me on Annabel _Edmonds _comedy on Instagram, and Annabel Ed Comedy on Twitter and Blue Sky. I'm on Blue Sky, but like no one's really replaced Twitter yet. I'd like to be off Twitter, but it's not died quite yet. But yeah, Instagram is the best place. As I say, Ricky _improv has Instagram. Punorama Investigates is on Instagram. It's Instagram. All the links and so on will be there, so please check me out there.
And the podcast can be found on Spotify.
On all available platforms, the big ones, Spotify, Apple. It's called Punorama Investigates, so like panorama but pun, because there are some, don't you worry, there are some terrible puns within this podcast.
And you can find us on Instagram at Open Mic Comedy Pod. We've got a website, openmiccomedypod.com. I'll always ask, whichever platform you're listening to us on, please give it a like, follow, subscribe, and all that kind of jazz. And just want to say thank you for your time today, Annabel. It's been a fascinating chat.
Oh, good. I'm glad it was somewhat interesting. Well, I've really enjoyed speaking to you, Mark. It's been good to catch up.
And I hope people that when they listen to this, take a moment to think about what's going on around them and can make it better for everybody else going forward.
Yeah. There's lots of lovely people and we can all come together and make it better. We absolutely can.
Yeah. And just for everybody else, I will speak to you all again very, very soon.